well as his pain. And just talking about how, the brain is predicting certain things because, from experience, made a lot of sense to him
Yeah.
about why things were happening in his brain the way they were. So, I think that, like any model of thinking, feeling, perceiving, I think there's some wonderful applications for certain clients at certain times. So I'm really interested to see kind of where the author goes as this plays out.
Yeah. Awesome. I've also had clients with chronic pain not resonate because it sounds like, I mean, they they need there to be a reason for this pain that is in their body that's not, right? So it almost sounds like now even this is dismissing the legitimacy of my pain, when in fact that's not the intent or purpose, but even our clients have that kind of medical model internalized, that there's either something wrong with me or my pain is in my head. My pain is not somehow legitimate.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just seeing that just really quickly more as what's happening with thought process rather than the sensations in the body,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
multiple things are happening at once. And if we apply this to what somebody is thinking about their experiences rather than the cause of their experience or lack, that like the made up component, I think there could be a positive application.
Yeah.
But yeah, not with everybody and not with a lot of people.
Yeah. Good. Good. And I'm not a wiser. I'm not sure what your first name is. I apologize. Yeah. Unmute and yeah. Still muted. Yep. There you
Now
go.
that should be
Yep.
fine. Yeah, I loved it. And I was thinking how a brain that's designed to reduce prediction errors really explains the four blinks protocol. And I was just wondering what came first. Did you read about that
Yeah.
prediction errors before you came up with four blinks or
Yeah,
a
yeah, for
origin?
me, I think what came first was graduate education in the humanities, particularly cultural studies in the 90s, where so for me, the kind of so again, what we're doing here is in this approach, there's a lot in this related to the social construction of reality, right? There's a lot in this that really resonated with the stuff that I was exposed to. Um, that I was exposed to in culture studies, in the 80s. The problem with that is that way of thinking about it was very, very good at taking things apart, right? And helping to kind of dismantle the kind of power dynamics of our discourse, right? So what I found right from my own kind of personal journey as someone who had been deeply spiritual, right? And then was trying to figure out like what is the meaning of all of this, like scientifically. The kind of the idea that reality is constructed rather than we're observing it in the world was a very, very powerful idea. But for me, it only let me take things apart. It didn't let me build anything new. And this lens, because it's about the brain, because it's about the nervous system, and because it's not about artifact, it's about the thing creating the artifact. That's a big difference. So there are people, otherwise reasonable people, who say that this model of the brain might help us understand ourselves, right? Really come to understand what cognition is, come to understand maybe even eventually what identity is and how it, how it is. So this was super exciting because it allowed me conceptually to get off the little postage stamp of the way that social construction really, really felt true, but it was a practice dead end to me from from someone who wanted to create when that tool only dismantled. So I think this allows us to create. So I also think kind of whether this came first or whether Four Blinks came first. Four Blinks came from recognizing how we heal from that kind of originally like a Bruce Ecker lens, like we heal, just really quickly. I want to sketch this out super quick because it's really, really important. The Bruce Ecker lens is looking at what was transformational in individual counseling sessions, right? Looking at what's transformational in individual counseling sessions, and then also looking at memory reconsolidation research. Okay. That resonated with me because it resonated with me from what I was seeing in EMDR and what I was seeing in other experiential ways that I can heal. I think the Bruce Ecker lens is really, really validated by this predictive processing lens because it's yet another level of abstraction that is saying the same thing. So, anyway, that's a long, kind of windy way for me to say that humans heal across prediction error. Humans heal across experiential mismatch. And if you're an EMDR therapist, you know this because the difficult stuff connecting with adaptive stuff is prediction error all day long. Parts work leverages prediction error all day long. So, so with me, it's all always been one piece. Like all of the things I've like ever been interested in, from social construction to like how we heal to being interested in Bruce Ecker's lens. Oh, I will say Bruce Ecker is frustrating to me because he says we all heal the same way, but then immediately says the way I do it's best. Right. And then all these other ways are not really good ways to heal. Yeah, that was a roundabout not answer of the question. But for me, what came first was the social construction ideas out of the humanities. And I think that was helpful. It was helpful for that idea to get out there. I think it was helpful for those ideas in philosophy and in literature and in the social science to get out there the idea that we don't experience anything as it is. We experience it through our concepts. We experience it through our power systems. We experience it through the cultures that have shaped everything, including our own selves. So, yeah. Patricia.
Um, for me, this was the part that was very shocking and had a big impact was the anecdote about the construction worker with the nail through the boot, because I used to tell my clients, what is your body telling you about this? Check with your body. The body tells the truth and things of that nature. And this was like, it shifted a lot of that
Yeah.
because this lens about the brain creating a hypothesis and then using the sensory information to confirm or disconfirm, and using it to sometimes support this hypothesis. Because in the case of this anecdote, this construction worker, seeing the nail, that was something that he perceived through his senses, produced pain, and the pain was not there really, but that was his experience.
Yeah.
So it kind of made me revisit a lot of the things I tell my clients in my sessions about the body.
Yeah. I do think one of predictive processing's real benefits to us might be how we reconceptualize the metaphors for what's happening. Um, because we've been stuck kind of in the same metaphorical hole forever. Yeah, Carol.
Yeah, that's what hits me because I also come from cultural studies and semiotics, which is really studying the metaphors. And the trauma community has spent so much time trying to move from, cognitive full swing to somatic and look at the truths that we have. The truths that we have is it's all in the body. You start with the body. Well, yes and no. That's the reality of this stuff, which is very, very interesting. So yes, it's in the body, and yes, it's, in the brain, making the body. And our metaphors are, I mean, you're saying it's a maybe. I'm saying no, throw it out. Like we got to
Yeah,
throw this out because it's keeping us from really using all of the disciplines that are coming at predictive processing, which are also philosophy and sociology and cultural studies and
yeah,
cognitive and computation. I mean, that's, I think,
yeah,
the weakness in psychology as it's taught is that it's not interacting with other disciplines,
yeah.
you know?
And my concern is that all of these other disciplines are talking with each other about
Yes.
this. We need to be there. Like
Yes.
we need to really be there because we're the people who see all day long what they're theorizing about, right? We're the ones who see how you leverage present-based sensory focus in updating a piece of the generative model that you have of yourself in the world. We're the ones that actually have really good ideas about how to do that work. So, yeah. Michelle.
So I love this, really, really love this. And it's also very familiar to me. I'm a long-term meditation practitioner and I have a background in Buddhist studies. And so this feels so resonant to me. There's so much overlap that I can see between, quite frankly, just like the teachings of the Buddha around perception and memory and how we create this sense of reality and a sense of self. Um, and basically being able to deconstruct it.
Yeah.
But then I'm sort of with you because I'm now in the place of okay, like let's deconstruct this maladaptive or incorrect perception that we have about ourselves or about the world. But then what, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy for me to deconstruct it, but I'm still not quite at the place where I can construct something new. But one other thing that I think is interesting, and I don't know whether it was touched on in this first part of the book, but how this also is very relevant to like the default mode network and the
Yeah.
salience networks in the brain, that like
Yeah.
the salience network is always sort of scanning for like what is salient in our experience? Where do we want to place our attention or place our awareness? And how that's always constantly going on just below the surface of consciousness.
Correct.
I don't have
And
any questions necessarily, but just lots of, I
yeah,
love this stuff. I live for this. So,
yeah. I do think we're going to be hearing a lot more about network neuroscience. You're going to be hearing a lot more about, and again, these are not competing, these are not like opposite ways of understanding the brain. They're just looking at it through different layers, right? They're just looking at it at different layers of abstraction. Yeah, good. And those of you that are interested in mindfulness, Carol, when you have a minute, do you mind dropping Mark Miller's mindfulness
Yeah.
podcast thing in chat? Because I think I think there's stuff there that many of you might resonate with. Awesome.
And Mark Miller, just so you know, Michelle, he's one of the leading, he was a co-researcher with Andy, but his whole entire focus is contemplative approaches to predictive processing. So, and he's a lifelong meditator. So his understanding is yes, whatever's happening in meditation is one of the ways that that shift can happen, and very powerfully, actually. So I will drop it in.
Thank you. Good. Any other questions or thoughts or reflections or commentary or complaints? This may not be for everyone, and that's okay. Yes, Brooke.
Okay, so I have only gotten through a couple of chapters because I just decided fairly recently to join the book club. So the book kind of just arrived last week. So I've only got through a couple of chapters. What I've read so far, it seems to make sense, right? Like it seems to be like, oh yeah, of course, that's how the brain works. So I mean, I guess I like it because it does make sense so far. And I'm definitely curious to see where the rest of it goes. Sorry if you're hearing a lot of background noise. I'm sitting outside because I just got home for the day. I mean, it started addressing it maybe like in the second chapter or something about just memory. And is it, just kind of how that plays into, is it just our memory, or is it, I don't know. I guess I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say, but I just noticed that was just a question maybe that came up as like, okay, so how does that play into this predictive processing
Yeah.
or whatever? And then I guess even like another thought, like even just like a last session, I feel like I kind of watched that play out. I guess the reason why it makes sense is, when things happen in childhood, it's like we're taking that information, and then like that does kind of transform like how we respond to similar things in the future, right? Or even as adulthood. Okay, some things happen that might have us adapt how we respond to a similar situation. So I guess it just makes sense. So far, that's how I'm interpreting it. I guess that's what I feel like
Yeah.
it's telling me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
So.
Yeah, Miriam.
Yeah, hi everyone. I have like a lot of like sort of loose, disjointed thoughts, but a lot of it really resonated with me. And I have a background in like transpersonal and psychodynamic, psychoanalytic work, and then now I do a lot of EMDR. And for me, they all tend to work together. They jive, but they don't seem to be talking. And then I also, I think the disconfirming piece of like clients coming to therapy and then they have a disconfirming experience, right? Relationally in the work, right? Like the therapist doesn't turn away when they admit sometimes they hate their partner, or the therapist isn't disgusted because they have disclosed like sexual abuse, right? There's all these micro even just showing up on time and ending on time, right? Can be very like disconfirming and containing. And then too, I mean, I've had strange experiences where, I've had pain, and there's like this very famous old book about back pain where you read it and it like cures your back pain. And it is this sort of almost like hypnotic state you get put into reading these certain books or doing certain like pain relaxation things, which did really resonate and make a lot of sense. I think my main hesitation, and I read the first 4 chapters and then I skipped ahead to his bit about like how to apply. And as someone who has been in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area for a long time, and Silicon Valley, like most of those suggestions were not like either new or very accessible, just like VR, psychedelics.
Yeah.
Even, I mean, I have a meditation practice, but like trying to sell my very anxious clients on meditation, it's like a lot of like hacks, that get wrapped up in this culture of like continuous improvement instead of just kind of being, which always sort of gives me a little bit of pause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm struck as well by the idea that there's not a lot of very strong ideas, so at least so far in what I've been reading, about how to actually do this work. So these works kind of sketch out what that work would look like, but I think we're the ones that are going to have to sketch out how you do it, right? And we're the ones that are going to have to say, and we're the ones that are going to have to do the research that shows that there's something to it, that this is a more effective way to work. What I love about this approach and the way it kind of lines up with, like prediction error, is that this is one of the ways of healing that we intuitively get, right? So I kind of say, clients don't come and we just beat them. Does it make sense? We're holding their nervous system in a way that is different than it's been held, right? We're engaging with them, we're holding them in a way that is different than the ways that they were wounded. So even that most very fundamental meeting of two nervous systems is can itself leverage prediction error. So I think what I'm excited about this is the way that this might help inform what therapy should be, right? When it's going well, and how why might we be able to leverage not just prediction error, but so much about this as you get to the later part of the book, so much about this is about where we attach attention, right? What we ask clients to attend to on purpose, and how that might shift what gets weighted, right? And what gets attention, and then what gets confirmed or disconfirmed, and ultimately what in your generative model of the world might get updated. Yeah. Bob.
Thanks, and really thanks for doing this too. It's an area that I've been looking at for about 2 or 3 years in my MSW classes that I teach or taught. I just retired. We've been really trying to integrate a little bit of the research literature in this area into our advanced year curriculum to help students to think differently about perceptions and cognitions. Um, but I hadn't read Andy's book at all. And so this was a real good opportunity to kind of do a dive into the philosophy as well as the neuroscience pieces of it. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the practical pieces that you were talking about, because it came up for me a couple of times in the last few weeks. Since reading the book. One was a client who has chronic diseases. She's only in her early to mid 20s, and I've been working with her for 3 or 4 years. Did some EMDR around medical trauma from her childhood experiences of being hospitalized and near death a couple of times. Um, and right now we're working on a lot of maintenance stuff because she's doing great in her life, but she has these moments when she feels overwhelmed and she feels almost panicky. I can't do this. I can't take this. And we've been using some CBT stuff around that, somewhat successfully. So last week we worked on helping her to understand it from a different lens. And her lens was around her prediction errors that, first of all, there was a catastrophe on the horizon, and secondly, that she was not equipped to be able to handle it. And so those two pieces coming together overwhelmed her sensory experience of, I'm a really competent person. Everything in my life has gone great, and I'm really smart, and I really know what I'm doing. And yet I have these periodic moments of falling apart. And she just kind of took that piece on and understood it in a whole new way. Now, obviously, we got work to do to sort of deal with all of that stuff, but just the insight that she was able to gain from a different lens of how to look at that in a neurobiological lens, which appealed to her sort of intellectual academic side as well.
Yeah.
And then the second practical example, I do a lot of work integrating social workers into police departments around the country. We've got an organization that's been sort of leading the way in trying to do some early research on this, supporting police officers to understand social work and social workers to understand police work. Our team is interdisciplinary. And I was thinking very hard about the ways in which we might use predictive processing in writing about this experience to make it easier for everyone to talk about racial disparities in arrest, to talk about unnecessary use of force when dealing with people who have chronic and severe mental illness on the streets, and how this may be sort of an avenue that opens up the discussion better than a more direct discussion of racial bias and animus. And so and I'm not sure where that's going yet, but I've been really thinking a lot about that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Good. Question in chat. What sort of metaphors do people think need replaced? The metaphors that we've used are the metaphors of triune brain. And they come from probably the best science that was available in the 50s and 60s. But we base how we explain the neurobiology of trauma on science from the 50s and 60s. Right? That is substantially older than I am, and I have gray hair. Right? That's a problem, right? I mean, we are learning an enormous amount about the brain all the time. And anyone that says that we've got this all figured out, we don't. I'm listening right now to neuroanatomy lectures at MIT, and the lecture is very, very clear. It's like, these are the parts of the brain that we have a reasonable sense that we know what's going on there. And most of it is black, right? Most of it is black. Um, so yeah. So the problem, yeah, the problem is that the old metaphors are very reactive. The old metaphors are you have a 150 million-year-old limbic brain that is dormant and then reacting when something triggers it. The really good news in this model is that your brain is always on. Your brain is always changing. It always has been changing, right? And the brain is not reactive, it's adaptive, right? We need to help it, show it how to adapt. And of course, kind of want to sketch this out a little bit more broadly, conceptually, just so that, I mean, many of you may not have kind of picked up on this in the first half of the book very clearly, but we have this model of the world built from everything we've ever been through. And then that model of the world is used largely to generate a large number of context-specific predictions about what's happening right here, right now. Those predictions are checked against sensory information right here, right now, and mismatch is sent back as prediction error to generate either new predictions or punchline update the model of the world that you have in your head. The point is that that stuff is happening right now. Your brain might be able to change right now, right? With the right type of attending and the right type of sensory attention. Yeah. So, um, yeah, Christine. Christine and then Patricia.
Yeah, so my question is having to do with, are there times where the predictive errors could actually be like a positive thing? And so, and specifically, you know, when we in our practice, we work a lot with military and first responders, police officers, that kind of thing. And the prediction errors where, you know, they see essentially danger everywhere, that actually functions to keep them safe in some way, even though it is a prediction error. You know, are there times where that is a good thing that we don't want to completely do away with.
Yeah. I would say if you're still in a war zone, your nervous system responding as though you're in a war zone is probably adaptive. And we need to be careful not to assume, and again, this is what slipped into accidentally when I was doing CBT as a very, very young therapist. I made assumptions about the safety of the world with people who lived in very different neighborhoods than I do, and they needed to be more hypervigilant and aware. One of the things I will say is that there is an enormously robust literature, one of the most robust literatures we have in the human sciences that suggests that trauma does not keep you safe. that having an enormous amount of trauma is a gateway to subsequent traumatization, and that what keeps you safe, right outside of war zones, what keeps you safe is being able to adaptively respond to what is happening right here, right now, which means you need to be finely attuned to what is happening right here, right now, rather than to the um, projections and the predictions from what was happening 27 years ago. If what happened was, you know, 11,000 miles away in a war that isn't happening right here, right now. Um, so maybe, but I think a lot of healing is letting the nervous system update that generates adaptive predictions that and the right types of prediction error that match your right now ecological niche, right? So what is it that I need to survive right now? And am I burning an enormous amount of energy keeping myself safe from ghosts? Yeah. And none of us are safe, right? Some of us are much less safe than others. Safety is a, yes. We need to be aware. We need to be attending. We need to be, but we need that not to burn us up. Right? Yeah, Patricia.
I just have three things to say. I
Yeah.
had to add one to respond to your comment because I worked for 16 years in Oakland, California. It was super dangerous. And I'm also a traumatized person, so I know the difference between awareness and hypervigilance. And so from my experience is that I actually felt safe because my intuitive capacity along with my awareness kept me safe. And I was actually only in danger one time, and my intuition told me I could
Yeah.
feel it in my skin, and boom, I got out of there. So I do feel like awareness is better than hypervigilance, because hypervigilance has so much fear associated with it that you become jumpy at things that aren't actually dangerous. And I was going to say one other thing, that how to apply this predictive processing in our work. Like, one mindfulness activity that I found is that I just have people like look around the room and describe things in terms of the shape and color, and then listen to sounds, and then notice their body as it's changing. And so it seems like, because the mind gets information about danger from two places, in the brain and also what it's seeing. So I feel like it gives the brain information that's more accurate than actually what their brain is saying. So it creates a new predictive experience of actual safety. And then the other place I think this predictive processing is really working is in the
Yeah.
coherence therapy world, where they do a lot of work with memory reconsolidation. And so it's kind of cool. It's like memory consolidation really dovetails nicely with this theory,
Yeah.
because it's like you take the truth, and the person sometimes will write down the truth they don't believe, but keep seeing it. And then after a while, they're like, because they say in their theory, you can't hold two contradictory truths at the same time. So if you believe that every time I speak up, I'm going to be shamed because my father shamed me, but then it's like, then you hold back. Actually, I have good ideas when I speak up and people like it, but you keep seeing that enough times, the brain's going to be like, actually, this one isn't true. And then in that particular modality, it seems like they are able to get generalization and actual like memory shifting, where they don't re-experience those symptoms again.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's helpful. Maybe it's helpful to like think about many different types of psychotherapy through this lens. So coherence therapy broadly is, you know, Bruce Ecker's kind of version of this. And what Bruce Ecker's trying to do ideally is shift the whole belief about yourself all at once, right? He's trying to like change a whole negative cognition, ideally, if we can, in a single instant, right? In a single kind of, right? Those of you that do coherence therapy, does that make sense? Is that a fair description of ideally what he's trying to do is identify the belief and then identify an experience that precisely disconfirms the belief, right? And then has you sit with that, right? And sit with that and repeat that if needed, right? So coherence therapy does that, EMDR does that, right? EMDR, I mean, my goodness, every single transformational therapy, meaning a therapy that has a fair chance of completely shifting some little piece of the model that you have in your world in a session or two, does this. They all leverage prediction, error, and precision weighting in their own kinds of ways. Parts work does that, right? EMDR does that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this Bruce Ecker says we heal in one way. And what I'm suggesting is that predictive processing suggests that he's probably not wrong, right? That we heal experientially. By the way, there's some places that I can go where there's some conferences I could go to where the idea that we heal experientially is still woo-woo.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah,
There's this conference happening in Boston, not next weekend, but the
yeah.
weekend after that, on consciousness and mental health. And it's a lot of Harvard professors who are speaking. But I wish you would go, Thomas, because I just feel like I wish they could hear what you have to say about what's actually happening in the field. Because sometimes I feel like the educational institutions are like back in the dark ages as far as actual practice. Because it's like
Mhm.
it's so incredible how the flash technique can help people so quickly process their trauma,
Right.
and also your four blinks. And
Yeah.
I just feel like, do they even know that exists? So
Yeah, I don't know.
encouraging
We're
that.
trying.
Yeah. But anyway, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I thought maybe people might find it interesting to
Yeah.
put 2 cents in there.
Yeah. They
I'm gonna
have
try.
they have all the expensive tools. Right. They have the fMRIs and they have the the people that know all this stuff about the brain and we sit with people. We sit with people and do this work, largely using our own nervous system, right? Using our own nervous system. Yeah. Good questions. Or who would like to go next? This is lovely. Yeah. Yes, Patricia.
There's also a group of people in Massachusetts who work differently with autism, where they literally use their own nervous system to help people with autism regulate their nervous system, which I think has fascinating applications also for non-autistic patient clients who are suffering, because
Yeah.
they join with the client. Like if their stimming is rocking, they'll rock with the client, and instead of trying to suppress the stimming, which is what the ABA model does. And it's
Yeah.
incredible. I mean, I've used it on some kids, and it's just a sig. I've never heard anyone else talk about your own nervous system is actually what's really helping to regulate.
Yeah.
That seems like it's so true to me.
Yeah. Miriam, thank you.
Um, I have a sort of a two-parter. Patricia, what you were just saying, maybe think about the research about mirror neurons and even just like experiences I've had. Like one of my nieces falls and I see her fall, I get like a shock to my system. Like I feel literal, like physical pain. Um, And I think vice versa, right? Like when I calm down and when my heart rate's lower, with my partner and we give each other hugs, right? Like that's, I think, like a common couples therapy thing, right? You give each other like a 30-second hug and you can co-regulate, right? Because your heart beats and like it's not a cognitive talky process. One of the things that I kept kind of mixing around in my head while I was reading some of this with prediction errors is I used to work in a county which held Oakland, California, that we had this assessment for children in foster care, and one of the measures was a ranking of the metric difficulty responding to danger cues, which was sort of the opposite of hypervigilance, or like this real difficulty in understanding that like certain kinds of in particular people and situations aren't safe, right? And difficulty responding to those cues because of trauma. And then also, I have like adult clients who will joke, or they'll maybe do some sort of like 12-step recovery, and they're like, oh yeah, I can walk into the room and I like click with every single, narcissistic alcoholic in there, and there'll be 50 people and two of those, and I'll gravitate towards them. And I'm not sure if that's like a prediction error in like what feels good or what is okay behavior, right? Is it that sort of cliche of like, well, love feels like being belittled, or somebody playing like games with. So I'm kind of curious about like how to think about like a prediction error when it's impacting people in that way, or how to intervene.
Yeah.
Do people feel more comfortable when they get their predicted result? I wonder, like, oh, here's my
Yeah.
predicted result. Now everything's great, but actually it's not. But because
Yeah.
it's comfortable and familiar,
Yeah.
I wonder if that's the case.
Yeah. Carol.
Yeah, there's something I've been looking at, and Andy's practice doesn't deal with so much with neurotransmitters, but the reality is, and I just found this out about EMDR, is there's a dopamine hit when you begin to make the shift, which is a remarkable idea when you think about predictive processing and you think of a hack or you think of shifting, because dopamine actually helps that. So if he or she walks into the room and that's what you're attracted to because of trauma or whatever, you'll get a hit from that. So one of the other researchers, actually it's Mark Miller, who's done a lot of work with addiction, is explaining it through this model, which is totally different than any other model. He's basically saying, no, this is predictive. The predictive of that hit gives me dopamine, therefore I'm going to feel good, therefore I do this action, right? So it's the changing of the action versus any other AA or any other actually notion that is more effective. But the dopamine, most of these guys don't talk yet about neurotransmitters, and they're a huge impact on memory reconciliation, because that's actually the hit that you're getting in EMDR.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. And of course, those of us that have done a lot of trauma work with people who have a lot of trauma, one of the things we notice, I think, is that there is a big need for an enhanced phase 8 in EMDR therapy, because you can do all the healing. You do all the healing that can help reset your nervous system, but you still didn't get the experience of having had your needs met. Right? You got to now go out in the world and do that. Right? But your nervous system, even though you've done a lot of healing from some of the worst of your trauma, that doesn't mean that secure attachment is going to feel like a good idea. It may feel very, very boring to you, right? With a nervous system that wasn't exposed to that when it was very, very young. So you got to go have new experiences and have new errors and learn way developmentally out of sync how to go out into the world and figure out who you are and what you're worth and how you deserve to be treated. You have to do that experientially. Yeah. Question.
IFS gives a hit though like that too, because you're using your own awareness to
Yeah.
notice those parts that are wounded. And I've had a lot of success with that, with people just feeling like this big warm feeling all of a sudden when they get noticed, like that need of
Yeah,
consideration, understanding being met finally by their own awareness. I find that
yeah,
fascinating. And because
yeah,
it's like if they can learn to do that on their own, it's like you get yourself out of your job, right? So they can take care
yeah,
of themselves, which is awesome.
yes. And of course, parts work is experiential relational work, where parts of you are having relationships with other parts of you that are different than the learning and the trauma, right? It's parts work is a wash and prediction error. Yeah. Questions? Yeah. Or comments? Comments. Leslie.
Yeah, I just found it interesting that I think you had a session about this at the EMDR conference. Is that right? I wasn't there. I'm sorry, but but I was at the IFS conference last weekend, and Sarah Bergenfield talked about this on Thursday. So
Yeah.
it's pretty wild that it's just bubbling up everywhere.
Yes, and we have connected and plan to do something soon when we can figure out our schedule. So, yeah, sounds like she's doing some really, really cool work, and I think has done some original work in this area as well. So awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say more about what she did?
Leslie heard a whole talk. I've only had two emails back and forth. So,
Yeah, it was a full day workshop. She is an autistic IFS practitioner. That's her focus. But I think she wrote her dissertation on predictive processing and that framework and
and neurodivergence, yeah,
right and
which
neurodivergent.
is fascinating. Like, yeah, territory. Yeah.
Yeah, her name is Sarah Bergenfield. Somebody just tapped in the chat.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah, she
Very
has a
good.
book coming out, I think. So that's cool.
Awesome. Good. Yep. Yeah. To help with secure attachment, would RDI help? I mean, yeah. I mean, it can. So again, those of you that don't know the meaning of all those words, right? Like, um, RDI is, well, let me put it this way. I think a lot of people are doing parts work in lieu of RDI. Right? I mean, I would argue that parts work is kind of a more thorough way of doing resource development and installation, right? It kind of accomplishes many of the same goals. But absent that, I mean, people need to have experiences when they haven't had enough of them, right? I mean, if people don't have constructs of things, we have to help them create the constructs of things. So one of the things that Lisa Feldman Barrett talks so much about is that you have to have a you have to have a construct of something to feel it. You have to have like you can't there's got to be something for it to link up with. And when people don't have it, we have to help create it. And when people don't have adaptive information, there's no magic at all in EMDR therapy. If you have no adaptive information or you don't have enough of the needed adaptive information, EMDR is a goose chase. And we have to help them create it. So, attachment resources or other types of experiential work is how we do that. Yeah. Yes, questions. I'm going to find my podcast playlist. Give me 1 second, I'll put that in chat. That's basically my Emdria talk. Um, that's my Emdria talk in a playlist, broken into pieces. So give me just a moment. 1 second. All right, we'll put in chat the link to that playlist. It's 5 episodes. I think the longest one's probably 25 minutes or something like that, but it's a 90-minute presentation broken down into pieces. And again, this is my first step. I haven't been doing this long, so I'm a new learner here as well. So I'm sure there's some things I could have said clearer or whatever, but that's all right. We're learning. We're learning how to do this. Good questions. Yes, Anna.
I guess not so much a question as some thoughts. I decided to listen to this on audio, and I discovered that's not my way of learning. So I'm very fuzzy on a lot of, it didn't really go in the way that I can regurgitate it or refer to it very clearly. But I feel like my takeaway was sort of that we're constantly running almost like algorithms that go down their own rabbit holes of prediction constantly. And whether it's traumatic incidences that get logged in our default and salience networks or just daily life sort of minutia stuff. And I had an experience since starting this book myself of a very sort of innocuous situation where I was going out to dinner with a couple of friends. We're going to pick up a friend, and they had a surprise party planned for me. I've never had a surprise party. I had no way to integrate what was happening. And it just struck me how slow I was to this. I feel like this refers to the phase 8 work that you're talking about too. We can have a mismatched experience, but like I was putting two and two together, so to speak, 10, 15 minutes in, we're at the party and I see that there's food. I'm like, are we not going to dinner? There's like 20 people there. I'm like, oh my God, like my brain really doesn't want to take in this new experience because I've never had it. I don't have anything to link it up with.
Yeah.
And so it just really struck me how potent it is and how under the surface it is in every sort of experience of our lives in some way.
Right.
So I don't mean this just to be anecdotal, but I feel like there must be some sort of something useful in realizing this or
Yeah.
applicable to therapy or something.
Yeah, we kind of need to have constructs to know what to do with things. Our brain needs to like know what predictions to make. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, we came in and I saw little tufts of hair behind a cupboard. I didn't get that was people. I'm like, it was just like the weirdest thing,
Yeah,
but sort of based
I
on
know.
this.
And at the Andrea conference, I'm there and I don't know people, but people know me and they're coming up to me and they're touching me. And they're like wanting to have conversations with me in this room with hundreds of people. And I had a lot of illness when I was a kid, so I have a lot of scarring on my eardrums, and it's really, really hard for me to hear in crowded rooms. So it was just such difficult work. But it was such a weird thing where it's like, I'm like trying to be there and I'm like but it's again, I don't know what to do with all of this. It's like, I'm just going to pee. Let me go to the bathroom and then we'll come back and we'll figure out whatever your question was. So yeah, it's very, very strange when we find ourselves in context where we don't have a way to like make any kind of sense of it. But yet we have to perform. Like this was a party for you. You couldn't just like run out of it and go, I don't know what to do. This was like your party. So
It was not an unpleasant experience at all. So that it was very
yeah,
neutral in the sense that I expect one thing and something totally different is happening, and there was no disturbance to it. So
good.
that was your unique situation in that sense. But just the slowness and catching on was really surprising and kind of funny to me. It's like,
Yeah, awesome.
yeah.
Good.
And the way that the brain tries to fit the little round pegs into the square holes,
Right.
and to see how, this speaks to bias of any kind too, right? It's like it has to be this, and I'm going to make it fit
Right.
somehow
I love the
until
example of what's the hair doing on the counter.
yeah.
The idea that there
What's
might
does
be
she
a
have
head on
dogs
the
now? Like,
right.
did she get dogs? Like a whole bunch of them since I last saw her? Just
Right. Thank you. Good. Yeah, Keith's question about how much prediction error needs to happen for things to shift. Um, I think that depends. One of the things, so again, this is one of the things that I'm kind of working through. We see what ideas you have, is that trauma is learning, right? Trauma is learning, but it is learning of a very specific type. It is learning that is salient, right? What that means is that it's almost encode. I mean, I would argue that it's learned differently and it's learned saliently and it's not meant to be changed easily. Okay? Because it serves very important purposes. What that may mean is that in those parts of the generative model, our nervous system may apply very high precision weighting on that information, right? It may predict very, very strongly based on that little piece of the generative model in your head, and it may not attend very much to right now sensory information. So, so how much disconfirmation is needed to move and shift trauma? What I'll say is that the answer is enough. You have to have enough disconfirmation for that little piece of the generative model to update. You have to have enough of it. What that is going to vary by client and by approach and by how we do it and by whatever else that connects to. But trauma isn't meant, and I think a lot of times we've the other kind of essentialist trap that we may have fallen into is we need to find the hack. Like we need to find the hack there's going to be this pathway that's somehow going to let trauma go from here to here. And my fear is that taxing working memory is being billed as like that hack. It's this like brain hack that we can do that's just going to get that information to go from one place to another. Um, but in fact, prediction error, like therapeutically leveraged prediction error and therapeutic directed attentional focus is what explains all of the transformational trauma therapies, including psychedelics, right? Your experience with psychedelics is different than your experience with that memory, not on psychedelics, whether it lowers your defenses, whether it allows you to interact with that memory differently, right? Or whatever else it's doing. That's all prediction error. Yeah. Questions? Yeah. Yeah, Jen and Bridger are doing a good podcast episode on brain on network neuroscience. I'm expecting a couple new episodes to drop before too terribly long, but the first two episodes they have are a really good introduction to network neuroscience. Not necessarily the topic here, but if this is a big leap from triune brain, network neuroscience might be a little bit more tolerable leap, where at least in that maybe you don't have to give up the idea that you have a free will the way we've always thought about it. But I'm down with that. I dispensed with that idea 35 years ago, like from from my work in the humanities. So yeah. Questions or reflections? Yeah. What about this is exciting to you, if anything?
All of it.
Yeah. What about this is like, oh, I don't know. Because I think as we kind of start to rethink the brain, we may be invested. I mean, as fields and professions, we may be invested in what a brain is. We may be invested in our old metaphors. We may be invested in the story that we've always told ourselves about what a nervous system is and how it works. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Questions or reflections?
I have one. Let's see, it's from chapter 3, and the notion that perception is embodied. I didn't mean to say trash the bottom up, top down, but if anyone's a sensory motor psychotherapist here, I mean, I've had some experience of it from my EMDR practitioner, who's also a sensory motor guy. And when I did one movement only. It was about attachment in a developmental stage, and it immediately changed. So but basically, sensory motor is also saying these are all connected. Pat Ogden has always said, not only the psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, this is unconscious stuff, but I had been carrying something, and it was the stage of going out into the world. And he just said, walk across the room. That was and with my back held. And that was a moment when I realized, okay, the prediction was totally unconscious. And what
Yeah.
sensory motor is doing is making it conscious.
Yes.
I mean, so is Levine, but the combination that
Yeah.
we did EMDR right after that. There's the stage we haven't worked with.
Yeah.
Something happened there that you stop going out into the world and feeling confident or learning actually. It was a learning experience, and that's what I realized all of this is. If you can find a learning, something that the brain loves, which is to learn and shift.
Yeah.
I think I was just thinking why the triune brain, I think, needs to be thrown out, because it keeps many people in the notion that this is almost hopeless and it's so hard work and everything's in that damn amygdala and the bottom of the brain and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's all working all together. And when the podcast that you mentioned, when they start talking about working with different networks and looking at the story that the client is telling you and figuring out where is it in which network are we in, the idea of networks versus parts of the brain is probably the radical change that needs to shift. And it shifted 30 years ago in every other field. So it kind of, if we get out of, there's a part of the brain and a part of the brain which is not accurate at all. And if you explain to someone that there are networks, it's actually more amenable and understandable.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
I think it's the way we talk about the metaphors.
I think it is. And I think if we tell, instead of telling them you have a 150 million year old part of your brain that is just overpowering you all the time, if we tell them instead, you have a model of yourself and the world that is inside you that's built from all your experiences, and that perception begins with that model and not from your right now senses, that they may go, oh, that makes sense to me. Do you know what I mean? Because it immediately counts for the duality between how they live and their non-traumatized neighbors live. And then the goal is for us to help update the predictions that your brain largely unconsciously is making about your right now reality. Yeah. And I think a lot of what it is making I think a lot of what trauma work is making the unconscious stuff update. It's like constructing the right experiences that allow and we may never actually touch it, right? We may never actually touch it. But with the right type of experiences, we may allow it to update. We may help promote it updating on itself organically without us having to. And I just did a flash training this morning, and a lot of people there were really fixated on the idea of cognitions, right? And what I'm saying is that, well, cognition shift when we heal. That's what healing is, right? It's almost like we have to like do extra things we have to like extra wring them out somehow. Do you know what I mean when we heal? And maybe that's helpful to have new, other types of prediction error, but yeah, I think, I don't know, we're stuck. I think we've been stuck for a long time. In what a brain is and what therapy is. And I think this is an interesting kind of reframe for what it might be and what we might do. So how do we do therapy with a brain that is built this way? Does that make sense? And again, it's not just perception. Almost everything the brain does seems to work this way. So whatever this is, it seems very, very important related to what a nervous system is, what a perception is, what a reality is, right? All of that stuff. So what is this? What do we make? How might a brain this way shape how we think about what therapy is and about what healing is and about what we're updating and how? Yeah. Questions? Questions, reflections. Yeah, Miriam.
Kind of on that note of what therapy is or could be, or how do we like update the way we're working and metaphorizing. I can't find it. I've tried to find it in there. He mentions at some point there's like something about some people, despite similar backgrounds or even twins and siblings, one can have very different experience of trying to update either later in life or learning from new good experience, and one won't, right? Which I know sort of like the taxing the working memory or even like psychedelics can help sort of facilitate some of that learning. But I'm wondering, I think that's kind of more to my point from before, is like how can we make those things come together better and sort of softer. I sort of think too, some of the brain stuff is like, I learned with those like plastic models, and you take this part of the brain out and it's not like that at all. We're like goo, it's all just goo inside. Right, inside our brain and body. And one metaphor I'll use with clients is like stew, right? Like you can get the carrots out, right? And you can add more things and you can take things out, but in a way it's not sort of helpful to think about like, you can't just remove a piece of your brain, right? You can't just remove a memory, or even the idea of like you're processing something sort of has like this like digestive quality, which isn't quite exactly. It's sort of like this moving. When I think about the idea of processing, it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, and then it's kind of processed through or processed till it's done, versus a system update reboot, right? You upload the new software, you turn your computer on and off, and it reboots with all this new information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, the take home is kind of related to the core question of how do we do this?
Yeah.
We need to promote clients having different experiences, because remember, the cultures that wound us kind of like us to stay stuck, and they fill us with, a lot of our generative model may be information from the very cultures that wounded us, right? That stuff gets in too. So I think what therapy is that in therapy, we need to do something different than what you do outside of therapy. It needs to be experientially different, right? And we know this in kind of all the different kind of transformational trauma therapies that we have is that whatever we're doing, it needs to be different than what you're doing on a random Thursday when you're ruminating, right? Therapy needs to be different than than that. And it needs to promote helpful forms of prediction error that allow updates to the model of yourself and the world that's in your head. Yeah. And Catherine, I like this idea. That's one of the things that I think is the best top line explanation of a brain wired this way is that a brain wired this way is always changing. A brain wired this way, there's absolutely no doubt that it can change, right? And we can say that on one hand and say on the other side, yeah, the traumatized parts are really salient learning and they're not designed to change easily. It's not designed to change easily because the lessons in it were salient and they were repeatedly placed, right? Plus, every single time we've ruminated about it since has reinforced it. That is also in a brain that's in a black box. Rumination is really, 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 really not good. Right? Yeah. So if nothing else, we got to help our clients figure out how to do something else with that energy. Because ruminate, and my kind of right now take is rumination is just like dissociating into your generative model and swimming in the yuck. Yeah.
I have a thought, if it's okay to jump
Sure.
in. Well, it's not even it's a half-baked thought, but and it seems obvious, but I'm trying to put this all together. It's like, okay, so when we bring awareness to what it is that we are predicting, right? Like, is that an automatic? Well, it's not an automatic prediction error, but what I'm thinking, I keep having this thought, like, thank God we have the ability to notice what we're predicting if we try, right? I mean, it's obviously going on unconsciously all the time, but when we bring conscious awareness to it, and we can really, yes, when we bring conscious awareness to it, sorry, I lost my train of thought because I got interrupted, but that obviously that is like key, right? That
Yeah.
we can notice, ooh, I'm predicting this, and okay, now I can notice if there's something wrong about what I'm predicting. So anyway, half-baked thought, but it's just
Yeah.
appreciating, oh, we have the ability to bring conscious awareness to this, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if we had a brain that didn't, or we had a consciousness that didn't.
Yeah.
That'd be a problem.
Imagine if we couldn't direct attention to somewhere different
Right.
than our brain already does. Now that there's
Exactly.
discomfort in that. There's
Yeah.
discomfort in attuning to things that are not the regular things we attune to. And Eric Chamberlain has a really good Frontiers article about the predictive processing model of EMDR therapy for those of you that are EMDR therapists. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to reading about is the research that he cites that says when you direct purposeful conscious attention to the thing that is causing the prediction error, the prediction errors get amplified, right? So that is a very fascinating concept that when we actually, and that's probably what Carol was talking about in the sensory motor stuff, like when you really direct present-based attention to things, those errors can be really amplified, which may help promote updating of that little piece of the generative model. So we know this. I mean, we know this, that like there's something about sitting with and noticing the distress in your right now body and also seeing that it's not happening right here, right now. There's something about slowing down, being present. So the good news is that in all of these different approaches, what changes is what we're attending to. What changes is like, because trauma is trauma, but what's changing is like where do these different approaches ask us to attach our attention and our focus? And my take is that maybe it doesn't matter as long as it's different enough and like generates enough prediction error. Yeah.
I just posted that
Yeah.
article, Tom.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a thought just with EMDR. I wonder if maybe, say, even with Carol's experience, when there's a prediction error in several different realms, that might have more impact. Like that's what we do with EMDR, right? We're going for the cognition, the emotion, the way we're feeling it, trying to include a lot of different inroads to experience, and maybe that amplifies the effect of a prediction error,
Yeah.
possibly.
And one of the things that I don't know that we have any way of measuring it, but so it's really anecdotal, is that Flash is really, really effective, but it doesn't generalize as broadly as EMDR does. And that makes sense to me. I mean, EMDR is slow enough for you to touch all of this. EMDR is like this big mower that we pull behind a tractor. It like clears out, 20 feet of stuff when it works really well. So it may be that certain forms of working might generalize more broadly, might promote more broad updating of different parts of the generative model. It might, yeah. I don't know. And sometimes, thank goodness for Flash, sometimes we just need to find a little bitty, tiny, tiny, tiny piece of the generative model that's messing with you right now and update it. Right? Sometimes a little weed eater is like, it can get the job done also. Yeah, good.
And Tom,
Yeah.
aren't you thinking of it also as they've had the experience, as you said, of watching the bunnies and something happened, but watching the bunnies and the dog or whatever you're looking at, and that's a new experience. It's not the full connecting on all the
Yeah.
channels, but it is you come out of it and go, oh, I did that.
Yeah, I
Right?
think from a Flash point of view, and I'll come out with an episode 2 on a more kind of filled out version of a predictive processing view of Flash. So in Flash, at least in the version that I teach, what we do is we bring not one memory, we bring one little piece of one memory, right? Just this little bitty, tiny, tiny piece of the generative model. You know what that is? That's not very expensive. It's pretty easy to change with the right type of updating. Resolving a whole cognition may involve 2,500 memories and maybe much, much harder. So in Flash, we're just bringing a tiny, tiny piece of a memory into working memory. Do you know what happens when you bring a little piece of the memory into working memory? Your brain has to start making predictions about it. And what predictions is it likely to make? It's likely to make the predictions it always makes when you touch this piece of the model. But what we're doing is we're not just disrupting what you're focusing on, we're routing the information, the distress away from you, and then we're showing you puppies. And we're showing you puppies, or we're showing you bubbly hot pizzas coming out of the oven, or we're, showing you like, funny things kids say, whatever it is, whatever it is that really, really, really strongly disconfirms, because your nervous system is expecting one thing, but it's experiencing another. It's expecting, oh, bad stuff happens when I like touch this, but look, puppies, right? Flash is really a wash and prediction error. And to do it, you have to do two things that you just don't want to do when you activate trauma. You have to micro activate trauma, and then you have to have back to back to back to back experiences of pleasant information. We don't like that. That's not our normal go-to, but your normal go-to is what keeps us stuck forever in trauma, right? So prediction error. Again, EMDR therapy, the relational components of EMDR therapy, I'm convinced a lot of what's healing is the relational stuff. I'm expecting to be judged. Look, the therapist is looking at me warmly, right? I'm expecting not to be able to handle this, and look at me right here, right now, handling this, right? So yeah, it's cool stuff. This is a really good time to be a trauma therapist. It's a really good time to do the work that we do. I don't know that I'd want to do this work in 1949, right? Yeah. Good questions. Yeah, Danielle.
Well, even, I mean, my understanding is even as recent as like the 90s, you
Yeah.
know, they thought that once something was learned, it couldn't be sort of unlearned, is sort of how Bruce
Yeah.
Ecker talks about it, you know, and it's kind of wild to like that seems like such a crazy idea, right? That something is just going to be this permanent thing that you learn that can't be unlearned, that you're going to be constantly referencing, you know, it's not that recent that we realized, oh, that's not true. It can
Yeah.
actually be revised, you know, which is, I'm really grateful that that's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Me too. Again, the stories we tell ourselves matter, right? The stories that we tell ourselves about what wounding is matter. What a brain is matters. How it updates matter. Yeah. Questions? Yeah, Michelle.
Just kind of like a thought. I love all this. And you had shared like some of this stuff with me before, but I like kind of the analogy of like or metaphor, I guess, of like, you know, like a phone or like a computer that needs like an update. You know, we talked about like, you know, you have a processing system from like 1982, you know, and it worked really, really, really well then, you know, and it had to be that way with like all the adaptations and expecting people to hurt you and whatnot. But it's kind of glitchy in 2025 and it needs like a little bit of updating, you know, because the people, you know, you have car keys now, like you can go away, you know, from the situation. And you have choice and you have control. And so people, especially in the like 20s, 30s age, have like really appreciated that analogy, like, oh yeah, I totally need an update, you know, and it feels like empowering.
Right.
They're like, oh yeah, I do expect everything. And, you know, I was a little bit worried at first that they would feel like, you know, like what people expressed earlier, you know, like feel like it was judgy or like they're
Yeah.
causing it but no, they're like, oh crap, yep, totally need an update, need to do an
Mm-hmm.
update. So
Yeah. And then what we talk about is how much do we work on at a time, right? How much do we work on at a time? And if you like think about the whole timeline, how much awfulness is it? And from my perspective, the more difficulty, the smaller the piece we're going to need to update at a time, because the more we touch, the more your nervous system generates the predictive affect. Your affect is also a byproduct of your predictive system. And if your affect completely aligns with expectations, what you have is a re-traumatizing experience and not a disconfirming experience. So I guess the take-home message is it doesn't matter how you do it. You can dance it, you can sing it, you can psychodrama it, you can flash it, you can, you know, uh, do whatever with it. But whatever you do, it needs to be experientially different than what wounded you in order to allow that experience to update. Yeah. And that alone, many of us have worked in context where the treatments are re-traumatizing. right? Or where so our nervous systems don't do well there. I'm not looking at you, inpatient mental health, psychiatric context, not, or juvenile detention context, or, yeah, I don't know. Questions? Questions, observations. We also can wind down whenever y'all like. How's the time? And again, it's a kind of a pointless question to ask because it ignores the people for whom the time wasn't good. Right? So I think it would be hard to have a book club in the middle of the day, a middle of a work day for many, many people. Um, so I'm going to try to, if unless y'all have opinions, I'm going to try to put it at roughly this time with the understanding that people that would like to have a video can. Okay. The video I'm probably going to send, I have everybody's, as you signed up, I have everybody's email. I'll send the video of this out for those of you that would like to watch parts of it. And I'll also send it out for those who weren't here so that they can also do parts of it. Next group, we're going to do the second part, the second half of the book. And then the next month, I haven't published dates, but I will in the next few days. I'll publish the date for the Lisa Feldman Barrett book. I like her. I don't know that I'd want to work in her lab. Do you know what I mean? But I like her. She just seems she's fiery, right? She is really, really fiery. And but I've learned a lot from her perspective. And again, Lisa Feldman Barrett is largely about affective neuroscience. A lot of what she talks about is the way the nervous system constructs affect in the way we interpret affect. And her paradigm, I mean, she's one of the most quoted people in neuroscience. I mean, one of the most quoted, she's one of the most quoted scientists that we have. And she's got her own, I mean, you got to respect somebody that's got their own labs with fMRI machines and is asking really, really hard questions about how the brain is organized, like really, really, really doing original neuroscience work in that lab. So it's pretty cool. Who would have thought we could have gotten like 60 people together to talk neuroscience on a Tuesday evening? Had I seen this 3 years ago, I would have been like, I'm gonna just hear, you know, prefrontal blah 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 blah, medial cortex, blah, just like disconnect. But I think this is really cool stuff. So I'm glad y'all can come. I'm glad y'all can come. So, questions? Shall we wind down this adventure here? This is a good place. Thank y'all. Come back. Come back and I'll keep doing this as long as we come and we have fun and we get some ideas and get some resources and figure out these are metaphors. We got to figure out how to like sell these ideas clinically to ourselves and to our colleagues and figure this out. So yeah, this is our work. Yeah, Danielle.
Uh, Sorry, I know this is not the topic of this, but how often do you do the four blinks teaching nowadays?
I do trainings about 3 times a month.
Okay. All
And
right.
if you go to EMDR Cleveland, and scroll to the bottom, you can join a 3-hour flash training for free.
Awesome.
I do them that training I do at least twice a month.
Okay. You don't happen to have anything on demand, do you? To
It's
watch
on demand everywhere.
Oh, is
It's
it?
on,
Okay.
so if you go to Forblinks, FOURBLINKS.com, it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, it's on the Forblinks website, it's on My
What is like one
Thinkific,
of your
it's
full workshops or
the
just like
whole
a
work, the whole
awesome.
training
Okay. Nice.
broken down into modules. Yes, the whole training is there.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces of it, but I want to watch the whole thing in its entirety. So thank you for
Yes,
putting that out there.
awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.